In this video, we're going to check out 10 DIY batting cages that were built entirely with electrical EMT conduit and maker pipe connectors. And if you're unfamiliar with those two building materials, you can use them to build all kinds of awesome stuff like batting cages. And you can get EMT conduit in the electrical aisle of your local hardware and home improvement store. And maker pipe connectors are something that we manufacture in upstate South Carolina. Recently, we started partnering with individual retail stores, and you can find them in some Do It Best or True Value hardware stores. I'll link a store locator down below. But our full lineup can be found at makerpipe.com. And in this video, we're going to highlight the different techniques and the various, customized and unique batting cages that people have made with conduit and connectors. And this is really good if you're wanting to build something easily and affordably. You don't have to do any welding when you use conduit and connectors. It's just all friction based. You just use a handheld tubing cutter to cut conduit, and then you use a 5mm hex wrench to assemble connectors, and you can build these batting cages in your backyard or in other places like a basement or garage, as we'll see. And so this first one we've got is a 50-foot batting cage. It's 10 by 10 by 50 foot. This one was built by Ed, and this is a pretty standard frame that we're probably going to see pretty often in this video, and a lot of the same connectors. And I wanted to highlight them because I want you to be able to see that you can build various customized batting cages and really use the same connectors that a lot of these use, but then customize them exactly for your needs. And so the main connector that you're going to use in corner situations like this is going to be the 90-degree connector, which allows you to make a kind of a three-way corner connection, which allows you to make rectangles and cubes just like you'll use when you're building a batting cage. And that just essentially allows you to have one vertical piece of conduit running through the middle of the connector, and then of course going all the way down to the ground. And we'll look at some builds where it's pretty much the same design repeated on the bottom as it is the top. I don't think this one is. This one just has the 90s at the top and then various connectors being used to kind of brace the sides and everything. But essentially the 90 allows you to have that one piece running through the middle, and then because you don't have to weld and they're friction based, the other pieces of conduit just terminate inside the ends of the connector and then just run continuously to the next piece, as we can see there, and then terminates in the other 90-degree connector. And then this one is going to extend down pretty far, just like that, except this one is probably broken up because this is 50 foot long. It's probably 5 10-foot pieces, because usually you find EMT conduit in 5 or 10-foot lengths. So I'd imagine just doing, leaving it 10 foot and then just using connectors to kind of join those 10-foot pieces together. That allows you to, not have to do as much cutting. And so a technique you can do to do that is essentially wherever you have a break in the conduit at the end of your 10-foot stick, you can use the connector that they're using here, which is the 4-way connector, which is similar to the 90, except this one allows you to have a vertical running through the middle, and then it has a piece coming here that terminates, so it breaks up that 10-foot piece and then goes out. And then it also allows you to have a piece coming out the front of it, and that extends to the other side of the build. That's not really the best color to show that. Let's see. Let's try green. Is that any better? A little bit better. So then that allows you to have a piece to the other side, and then it's going to be another 4-way connector there. And so really those two connectors allow you to make these rectangular frames. You can reinforce them. You can extend your build. You can make this 20 foot, 30 foot, 40 foot. Technically you can keep on going forever if you wanted to. You just add that 4-way connector and add a vertical and add some supports. And we usually recommend that you have some sort of support every 5 or 10 foot or 10 feet. So I would use 45-degree connectors to add some angled bracing, or just add some verticals throughout, or you can brace it in different ways as they did with other connectors. So we got the T connector here, as we can see, and that just allows them to have this cross brace going back and forth. And then we can see there's various various T connectors being used all the way down to be able to do that. And then, just kind of used in different places to be able to add those cross supports wherever they're needed. But really those 3 or 4 connectors allow you to do this kind of technique and build batting cages and then customize it. Of course, you can use some of the other ones, like the 180-degree connector is similar to the 4-way. You could kind of swap those out strategically if you didn't want to add that 4th piece of conduit from one side to the other. But essentially, those are the main connectors you'll use to make any kind of box shape, like if you're building a batting cage. Then from there, you just need to find a net that goes around the cage. And I'd recommend starting there, looking for a net that you can buy, or maybe find it on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist Craigslist, something like that. I don't even know if people still use Craigslist, but Facebook Marketplace or, secondhand, and then build your frame based on the net you have. And something else too, we'll see throughout this frame is it's a good idea to have some sort of like foam on the pipe. And so you can use some pool noodles or some pipe insulation. It works really well to add that kind of foam around the conduit, and that works really well for this kind of build. But that's essentially the first batting cage. And like I said, I wanted to highlight a few of the main connectors because we'll see those repeated throughout this. But here's another photo of it from kind of a straight on view. Looks really good and looks like it's working out great. So thanks so much, Ed, for sharing this. We love seeing it. Next up is one of the original batting cages that we ever saw from the community, and this was shared by Mickey, who we did a build interview with. Definitely recommend checking that out if you're looking to recreate one of these or build one of your own. He shared a ton of insights, and it was a really awesome interview. I'll link that down below. But here we can see he, used like the 90-degree connector, like I mentioned, really common in the corners. But he also utilized some hanger straps and some flanges to, stabilize this and bolt it to the side of his fence and to the side of his house here. And we can see this is made in his driveway, and he shared a ton of photos so we can see, the progress of it. And then he also added some really cool customized features. There it is totally empty, and there it is all decked out with the insulation on there, with the netting on there. He's even got some of the fake grass down. And then he even built, I don't know if we see it in these pictures, but he mentioned in that interview that he actually built in a ball return that you can drop in, and it rolls all the way down the batting cage and comes out the other side, which is pretty fantastic and really clever. Yeah, I don't think we have any pictures of it, but you can check out that interview and you'll see it, and it's really cool. But this is an awesome one from Mickey and a lot of great ideas in it. Next up is a smaller batting cage that was built and looks like a finished basement, and this is just meant to be a T-ball net, and it's a pretty small scale compared to some of the batting cages we'll see, but a really good idea. And this is kind of a half frame, so you can see there's 90-degree connectors in the corners at the top and bottom, and then just kind of making this U-shaped frame to have this set up downstairs in front or kind of behind another net. And so, if you got a little one that's practicing some little league hits, you don't have too much power yet, so they're able to kind of do it in a more confined space. Of course, you want them to be safe, so do your own testing. Make sure you actually want this in your finished basement and not outside. But it looks like it's a really good solution. And I imagine if they're really small and just practicing T-ball, then I'm sure they're just fine in there. But this is really cool and a good example of, building like a half cage. And we'll kind of see similar things throughout. But this is a really great one. Thanks so much for sharing it. Next up is a similar one to the first two that we saw. And this one's from John. This is a little bit shorter. This one is 35 foot. Instead of 40 or 50 foot long, but similar techniques, except this time we can see he did add some 45-degree bracing, which, like I said, if you're going to build it wide or long, you want to add plenty of bracing, make sure it's going to hold up well long term. So he's got some 45-degree braces in there, and those of course, like all the connectors work the same way. They just grab on, really easy to add some bracing, and a good idea for this kind of thing. And then we can see some of the other connectors like the 90s being used in the corners, some T connectors, and pretty much just those main connectors I highlighted early on kind of used in this frame. And we can see here's a few different pictures of it kind of being put together with just the raw steel. I mean, it's galvanized, but it's not covered with anything. And then here we've got it all finished with the insulation on the outside, or the pool noodles, and the net, and it looks fantastic, and just another great solution. So thanks so much, John, for sharing it. We love seeing it. Next up is a unique one from Anthony that I wanted to highlight because this one is really cool because he actually has these kind of railroad ties or pieces of wood down here. And so instead of having this freestanding frame, he actually has these pieces of wood that he secured the conduit to, and he's just used some flanges. Now, we've done a lot of videos about flanges on the channel. I'll link some of them down below, but we've also taken a lot of community feedback and developed our own flange, which you can find on the makerpipe.com website, which allows you to bolt conduit to flat surface. And that's what he used here, just on each of these verticals to kind of give it a nice and sturdy base, and then built off of it and use some of those connectors that we've already mentioned, like the 90-degree connectors and 4-ways, and just all those connectors we've already mentioned a few times. He built the rest of the frame. The main difference is this one is bolted to the railroad ties. And we've also seen some other techniques for anchoring builds in the community that we've shared over the years. We've got some different videos on anchoring horizontal bars and vertical bars. You can get some great off-the-shelf things like Vortex spiral anchors. You can also use like rebar pins and hammer those in the ground to slide EMT conduit over it. There's a lot of great ideas, and you really add some security with not much effort and not very expensive. So I'll link those videos down below so you can check them out. But this one is really good if you've got a flat surface, even if you're building on concrete and want to bolt it down. We've also done a video on how you can add some mounts for flanges on concrete. So a lot of different ideas, but you can secure this really easily. But thanks so much for sharing this, Anthony. We love seeing it. Next one is really awesome from Ken, and this one I wanted to highlight because this just goes to show that there's really not much limit to the customization and creativity you can use when building it. This one isn't your normal standard, just rectangular box, easy peasy, just a few connectors. This one is pretty massive, and it's a giant arch, as we can see, and it's really complex, really elaborate. This would be a tough first project. You could do it, definitely. We've got some videos I'll link down below on creating arches and incremental bending to make circles and arches and different things. You can check that out if you're interested, but really this is a pretty complex build. But the same kind of connectors, same design, a lot of 180 degree connectors, a lot of T connectors in there, and pretty much the same kind of concept that we've been talking about, except this time it just incorporates a lot of arches, which looks really nice. I mean, I think it looks fantastic, and it's definitely a great solution if you have the patience and the skills to bend conduit this well. Definitely recommend doing that. It looks really great, and it's just an awesome thing to incorporate into builds. But this is really cool from Ken, and just wanted to highlight this and show you that it doesn't have to be just a box in your backyard. You can really customize this, and you can make it something that not only works great but looks great too. So thanks so much, Ken, for sharing this. Awesome job. Next up is a batting cage that was shared recently, and again, this just follows a lot of the building practices that we've mentioned so far. A lot of the 90 degree connectors being used for the box. We've got the 45 degree connector bracing there. That works really well, and pretty much just the same kind of standard build design and techniques that we've talked about and seen in these other builds. This one is cool because we can see we've actually got somebody doing some batting practice in there, which is really cool. I also love how they put up some rules here, which I think is a great idea, especially if you're going to be inviting people over. Of course, they want you all to be safe and make sure everything's holding up good. And I think the rules are a great way to make sure nobody's jumping and climbing up on the frame or climbing the net or anything crazy like that. So that's cool. But this is just another one. I think this one might be a little bit taller. It's probably still 10 foot. But really good, and just a lot of those same techniques, plenty of bracing in here, and I think it's holding up great. So that's really cool, and we love seeing it. So thanks so much for sharing this one. This one is really unique. This one was shared by Bree on Instagram, and they have several kids who play different sports, and they didn't want to take up their whole garage with their batting cage. So you can see there it's kind of in the mode that it is now, and they've got one son playing basketball, and then I think he's about to be done playing, and he's going to leave. But in the background, you've got some, looks like dad and one of the sons playing baseball and practicing batting in their cage that they built with MakerPipe. But now one son is going inside, done playing, and so now they can expand their batting cage. And this is really cool. They use some really great techniques in this, and allows them to essentially just slide this out. It kind of nests together, and they use some really heavy duty, I think, gate wheels that kind of saddle over the conduit, and then it allows them to, you can see there the wheels on the bottom of the vertical, they can roll this thing out and then expand the batting cage. It pretty much doubles in size. So whenever they don't need their driveway, they can slide this out and keep batting practice going, and they can extend the amount of space that the ball is moving inside there really easily. And again, really similar techniques, 45 degree connectors, 90s, 4-ways, T's, all those connectors that we've highlighted a bunch. But this time, this has got some really unique customization built into it. And, it's made to roll and expand, which is really creative and really awesome. So definitely wanted to highlight this and this possibility. So thanks so much, Bree, for sharing that. Great job. Next up is a similar solution, except this one is meant to be just kind of stored in a garage, and we can see the frame here nests. So there's two different frames, and one is taller than the other, and that basically allows them to kind of slide these pieces together, and then they can separate them and kind of slide them in the corner of the garage, and it's out of the way, and it's not really affecting anything whenever they're not using it. And then they can expand it and roll it out, take it outside, use it in the yard, bring it back in and expand it, shrink it back down and kind of take up little space in the garage. And if you orient the two open sides facing out, you could still put stuff underneath it, so you're not really losing a ton of space, just kind of the outer walls of the frame. You could even take the net down if you needed to. So you can really customize this, and there's obviously casters on the bottom we can see that allows this to roll and be able to nest, kind of similar to the recent build, or the last build, but just a little bit more, just a little bit smaller, and is meant to be stored in the garage instead of just staying outside and being able to expand. This one is just made for easy storage. It's a really great idea from Dino, and again, really similar techniques. I know I keep saying that, but just want you guys to know it's really easy to customize the frame. Once you have those core connectors, you can really customize and make it exactly how you need, and make it really unique, like these ones that we just looked at with the modular design. But this is really cool, Dino. Thanks so much, and I hope it's working out great. Next up is one that was shared by Edelberto. This is really cool, and this one uses a lot of 180s and 90s and T's in the same ways that we've seen. And then this one has some of the pool noodles or the insulation on the outside. And this one's pretty long. I don't know if we know how long this one is, but it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 60 feet long, if I'm not mistaken. This one looks to be a little bit longer than some of the other ones that we've seen. But again, same design, and has the netting on the outside, of course. And I think a lot of these, I haven't built one of these myself. I just see all the ones that have shared in the community. We've seen people that have said they just bought a net that's made for another frame, but the pre-existing frame is a lot more expensive and you can't really customize it. And I've seen people even say that they get a net that's larger than the frame that they need, and then they just kind of bunch up the excess and can move it off to the side or just have it on the edge of the frame, which when the balls hit it, allows it to kind of have some leeway and it doesn't actually bounce around in there because it's kind of draped over and there's a lot of excess, and so the ball just kind of loses all of its momentum whenever it hits that. So you don't have to find a net that fits your frame exactly, especially if you're building one to a custom size in kind of a limited space. So just keep that in mind, and like I said, check out secondhand places like Facebook Marketplace and try to find some nets for frames that people got rid of the frame but they still have the net for some reason. You can save a lot of money and you don't have to buy a pre-existing solution or weld one. Can make one really easy. And I haven't really highlighted the idea, we've seen the modular designs, but you could take these down completely every year. And of course, it'll take some time to put back up, but you're just using that 5mm hex wrench to, put connections together. It's just as easy to take them apart. You could tear down a whole batting cage, store all the pipes in the shed or in the garage or attic, and then put it back up the next year. Of course, you probably want to, do batting practice all year, not just during the season. But if you needed to take it down, if you needed the space, then you could do that really easily. And I haven't really said that, but that is something you could totally do. But this is a really great example, really similar to some of the larger ones that we've seen, but definitely wanted to highlight it and just show you guys that plenty of people are using conduit connectors and it's working out great. So thanks so much for sharing this. We love seeing it. Last but not least is one that's a little bit different than some of the ones we've seen. This is built by David. This one is 40 foot, and this one on the back end, I imagine where he stands to pitch to his daughter, he actually has an open wall so they can get in and out of there really easily. And we can see it's a kind of similar design with the 90s in the corners. Looks like some 45-degree connectors, a lot of T connectors in there to add some reinforcement and to attach that lower wall, which is a good idea. Usually we recommend with stuff like this, kind of build that upper rung, and a lot of people stop there and don't do a lower rung, but definitely recommend if you do that lower rung, it really helps a lot, adds a lot of stability, especially if it's a freestanding frame like this one. And then here you could do the example of what I mentioned of putting the rebar stake in the ground and then sliding the conduit over it. That could be a good idea to reinforce this, but pretty standard design. I think this one, you said 40 foot, so it looks like just a few sections and a few panels. And we can see here, I think he's actually using some canopy fittings made for EMT conduit. And then he said it was wobbly whenever he got that pre-existing one, and then he bought maker pipe connectors to reinforce it. So I think all the 45-degree braces that we see and the T connectors down here, I think are all maker pipe. Okay, so exactly what I was saying. The canopy fittings were being used up top, didn't have a lower rung. We can see here he added this lower rung with a T connector, a 90 in the corner, and then went all the way around the bottom and added the lower rung and added all the 45-degree bracing. So if you already have an existing batting cage made out of EMT conduit and some canopy fittings, you can pick up maker pipe like David did, and you can reinforce it and add some more strength and be able to kind of utilize what you already have and just make it better, which is always awesome. We love seeing people doing custom solutions, but we also love it when people can find maker pipe and improve the setup they already have. So that's really cool. And we really appreciate you, David. Thanks to everybody for sharing these builds. They'll all be linked down below if you want to check any of them out in more detail. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.